Okay, so imagine this. You've landed in a new country.
I'm excited.
You're totally ready for adventure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then
It hits you.
you need to ask, like, where's the bathroom? And suddenly you can't remember
Yes.
basic English. It's
Yeah.
like, poof, gone.
Yeah, it's that travel brain fog, isn't it?
Totally. It's crazy how quickly the simplest phrases just...
vanish.
Right. But you know what? That's why I'm so glad we're doing this deep dive today.
Absolutely.
We've got this guide. Like, it's packed with essential English phrases, right? For travelers, airports, hotels, restaurants. And it's not just about, saying the right words. It's about feeling confident,
Right.
like ready to handle,
anything.
any situation.
And what's really cool is it goes beyond just basic phrases.
Oh.
It gets into those little cultural things.
Nuances.
Yeah, the nuances that can really make a difference in how people understand you.
I like that. Okay, so let's get down to it, like practical stuff.
Yeah.
Say you've just landed, you're at the airport, you're dragging your suitcase.
Yeah.
Jet lagged.
Totally jet lagged, overwhelmed.
Yeah. So where do we even begin?
Well, the airport's a great place to start because it throws a lot at you right off the bat.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I once ended up
In the wrong terminal.
in the wrong terminal. I misheard a gate change. Stressful start to a trip, let me tell you.
Yeah. And that's exactly what this guide helps you avoid. It really highlights how even just basic phrases,
Wow.
like confirming your flight number, the gate, can prevent those travel nightmares.
Yeah, because in the airport, communication is
It's key.
everything. It's not about fancy sentences. It's about getting your point across.
And efficiently, yeah.
Exactly. So you're at the check-in counter. You're feeling a bit frazzled.
Yeah.
The guide suggests just saying something like, I'd like to check in for my flight too, and then your destination.
Simple and straight to the point. Love it. But what about those little extras? Like, for example, I need a window seat.
Always window seat.
Every time. How do I make sure I get one? Well, the guide actually recommends just adding, can I have a window seat, please?
Easy peasy.
Right. Simple, polite, and it increases your chances.
Nice. Okay, we've got our boarding pass, feeling good. But then,
Security.
ugh, the security line, I always get flustered there. Like, what goes where?
I know, right? It's like a whole routine.
Yeah.
But the guide advises using clear, simple questions.
Examples,
Do I need to take off my shoes, or can I keep my laptop in my bag? And of course,
please, and thank you.
always politeness is key.
It's about being direct, but respectful, right?
Right.
Because the security folks are just doing their job.
Exactly. And speaking of respect, this is where those cultural nuances come in.
Oh, right.
The guy actually mentions that in some cultures, direct eye contact,
Could be a bad thing.
it can be seen as confrontational. So being mindful of your body language in the security line, that's important too.
I never thought about that. See, this is why I love this guide. The details,
Totally. It's about understanding that communication is more than just words.
Right. Okay, we're through security. We're in the departure lounge. Probably feeling a bit hungry and thirsty by now.
Always.
So, how do we find our gate, make sure we don't miss our flight, and grab some snacks?
Yeah, well, that's where knowing how to, locate your gate, confirm the flight details, that comes in handy. The guide suggests phrases like, is this the gate for flight number to destination? Or what time does boarding start?
Super practical, especially if you're in a place where you don't understand the departure boards.
Exactly. And this is where I think the guide gives really good advice. It talks about not being afraid to ask for help.
Okay.
Like, if you're lost or confused, just ask an airport staff member. Most people are happy to help, even if there's a language barrier.
It's about remembering that kindness is a universal language. All right, so we've made it through the airport, snacks in hand. We've landed. Time to find the hotel, right?
Yes. And this is where that excitement can turn into
Panic.
a little bit of panic. Like, how do I even say what I need?
Oh, I've been there. Trying to remember how to say I have a reservation
Yeah.
in another language. It's like brain surgery.
I know. But that's why having a few key phrases for hotel check-in, that can make such a difference.
Makes you feel more
confident.
Yeah, in control.
This guy really emphasizes that. Feeling comfortable asking for what you need is so important for enjoying your stay.
Right, because you don't want to spend your whole vacation struggling to ask for fresh towels or...
Help with the shower.
Exactly. So what kind of phrases does the guide recommend for these situations?
Well, for check-in, something simple like, I have a reservation under the name, and then your name.
Clear and concise. Perfect. But what about other questions that might pop up, like Wi-Fi or breakfast times?
Good point. The guide suggests things like, what time is breakfast? Or do you have free Wi-Fi?
Practical stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about when things go wrong? The air conditioner breaks or you lock yourself out of your room.
Happens all the time. For those moments, the guide suggests, the air conditioner isn't working. Can you help me? Or, I've locked myself out of my room.
Okay, I'm feeling so much more prepared already. It's amazing how a few phrases can boost your confidence.
I know, right? It's empowering.
Okay, so we've conquered the airport, checked into our hotel, feeling pretty good. But all this travel makes you hungry. So let's talk food.
The best part.
Exploring new cuisines is one of the best parts of travel.
Absolutely. It's a way to connect with the culture.
But, I've definitely had those moments where I'm staring at a menu in another language and I'm thinking, what am I even looking at?
Oh, I know. It's that fear of ordering something
Awful.
terrible or something you're allergic to.
Yeah. So how do we help our listeners avoid those restaurant disasters?
The guide emphasizes clear communication, especially if you have dietary needs.
Right.
If you're planning to eat at a popular spot, it recommends making a reservation.
Good idea.
So something like, I'd like to make a reservation for 2 at 7 p.m., and if you have dietary restrictions, that's the time to mention them. You could say, do you have vegetarian options? Or, I have a nut allergy. Could you tell me which dishes are safe for me to eat?
So much easier than trying to figure it out from the menu later. Okay, reservation made. We're at our table. What's next?
The guide suggests starting with, can I see the menu, please?
Basic, but important.
Sets the stage for good communication. And then, don't be afraid to ask questions about the dishes.
Like, what is this? Or is it spicy?
Exactly. The guide actually tells a funny story about a traveler who got a dish he hated because he was too shy to ask what was in it.
Oh no, I totally get that fear of sounding silly. But I'd rather ask a million questions and be stuck with a plate of food I don't like.
I agree. And waiters are usually pretty understanding, especially in places with lots of tourists.
Okay, so we've ordered, we've enjoyed our meal, and now it's time for the bill. What are the magic words?
The guide keeps it simple. Can I have the bill, please? And to avoid any confusion, it's always good to confirm, do you accept credit cards?
Solid advice. Okay, we've covered a lot. Airports, hotels, restaurants. Mastering these English phrases can really make a difference. But is there anything else our listeners should keep in mind when communicating in a foreign country?
That's a great question. And that leads us perfectly into the next part of our deep dive. We've talked about specific phrases, but there's a whole other layer to communication.
Intriguing. Okay, well, when we come back, we'll delve into those nuances of cultural sensitivity and how they can really elevate your travel experience. All right, so we're back, and before the break, we were talking about how important it is to be prepared with those key English phrases when you're traveling.
Right, for navigating airports, hotels, and restaurants.
Exactly, and now we're going to kind of add on another layer.
Cultural sensitivity.
Yeah, because even though we have all these great phrases sometimes.
What's the things we don't say?
Yeah, those unspoken cues.
That can make or break a good interaction.
It's funny, because I've definitely been in situations where I thought I was being super polite. But my body language, or maybe even just my tone of voice.
Came across wrong.
Yeah, totally different in another culture.
Yeah, it's amazing how much we communicate without even realizing it,
It's true. So it's not just what you say, it's how you say it, and even like how you're standing.
Your gestures.
When you're saying it.
All of it.
Exactly. And, I never realized how much all of that can change from one culture to another.
Oh, absolutely.
Without contact.
Oh, yeah.
And in some cultures, it's a sign of respect.
You're paying attention.
Right, but in other cultures,
It can be rude.
it can seem aggressive or confrontational.
It's so interesting. So how do we avoid those awkward misunderstandings?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't be expected to know every single cultural norm of every country.
Right, you can't be an expert on everything.
Definitely not. But the guide emphasizes doing a little research beforehand.
Before you go.
Even just a few minutes learning about the local customs, the etiquette can really help.
So I should Google, cultural etiquette and then the country I'm visiting.
Exactly. It shows you're trying.
You're making an effort.
And that you respect their culture.
I'm here to experience your culture and learn, not just, impose my own way of doing things.
Yeah. And the cool thing about travel is you learn so much by just observing.
To pick up on things.
By watching how locals interact with each other, you start to get a feel for those unspoken rules.
Oh, for sure. Like when I was in Japan, everyone bowed when they greeted each other. It was such a simple thing, but it meant a lot.
It's those little details that make travel so enriching.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about nonverbal cues and doing some research before your trip, but what about when, even with all that, we still have trouble communicating?
Well, that's where technology can help.
Right.
The guide mentions phrase books and translation apps.
Lifesavers.
They can be so helpful when you need to get your point across quickly.
I remember carrying around these giant phrase books,
Oh, yeah.
trying to find the right phrase. Now it's all on our phones.
So much easier.
It's crazy how much technology has changed travel.
It really has. But even with all that, the guide still suggests learning a few basic phrases in the local language.
It shows respect.
It really does remember that story about the traveler with the notebook full of phrases.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't just about practicality. It was about making a connection.
Showing that you care.
Exactly. A little effort can go a long way. Okay, so we've covered nonverbal cues, research, and using technology, but let's circle back to those practical phrases for a second. We talked about the airport, the hotel, and the restaurant.
What other situations might come up?
Well, the guide doesn't go into too many other specific scenarios,
Okay.
but it gives you a good foundation.
So how can we apply those basic phrases to other situations?
I think the key is to think about the purpose of communication.
Like, what are you trying to do?
Right. Are you asking for information, making a request, expressing a need?
If we break it down like that,
Those phrases we learn
can be adapted.
to all sorts of contexts.
Like, can I have?
Exactly. That can work in so many situations.
Ordering a coffee, asking for a map.
Right. And where is another useful one?
Finding the bathroom a landmark.
Directions.
So many possibilities.
It's like building blocks you can mix and match to create new sentences.
I love that it gives people the tools to go beyond just the phrases in the guide.
As they practice, they'll naturally pick up more vocabulary and grammar.
It builds confidence.
And that confidence helps you connect with people on a deeper level.
I love that. Okay, before we move on, I want to talk to those listeners who might be feeling overwhelmed right now.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, like learning even a few phrases in a new language can seem scary.
Especially if you haven't done it in a while.
The guide actually talks about this. It says language learning can be intimidating, but
Start small.
don't try to learn everything at once.
Just focus on the phrases you'll use the most.
Exactly. So instead of memorizing a whole phrase book, pick a few essentials.
The ones that will get you through those common travel situations.
Exactly. And they also emphasize practice.
Repetition is key.
So find ways to use those phrases, even if it's just practicing with a friend or using an app.
Then make it fun.
Yes.
Watch a movie. Listen to music. Cook a meal.
Immerse yourself in the culture.
The more you enjoy it.
The easier it will be.
And remember, the goal isn't to become fluent overnight.
It's about making an effort
Building confidence.
and having fun while you're doing it.
Exactly. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with this thought. Language learning is about more than just words.
It's about opening yourself up to new ways of seeing the world. So welcome back to the deep dive. You know, we've been talking about all these tips and tricks for using English confidently while you're traveling.
Right. All those practical phrases.
But I feel like there's something bigger here.
Yeah, right. There is.
This guide, it's great for the basics, you know,
The nuts and bolts of communication.
but it also hints at something deeper,
This connection between language and how we experience the world.
especially when we're traveling.
Exactly.
So tell me more about that connection. What do you mean?
Well, think about it, language. It's not just about exchanging information. It's about how we connect with each other,
How we tell stories.
how we understand different cultures.
And when we travel, we're stepping into a world where all of that is different.
Right. It's a different way of seeing things.
So learning even a few words in another language,
It shows respect.
like you're acknowledging that difference.
You're making an effort to see the world through their eyes.
It's like saying, I see you, I respect your culture, and I'm trying to connect with you on your terms.
Exactly. And those efforts, even if they're not perfect,
It can be really powerful.
they often lead to the most memorable travel moments.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I was in Italy once, and I tried to compliment this woman on her scarf. My Italian was terrible, but she was so happy, and we ended up having this whole conversation.
Mostly with gestures and smiles.
I know, right?
That's the magic of travel.
It's those little moments of connection.
Even if you don't speak the language perfectly.
I think a lot of people are afraid to try because they don't want to sound silly.
I get that, but honestly, most people appreciate the effort,
They do.
even if you make mistakes.
And sometimes those mistakes,
Lead to laughter.
they break the ice.
They create a shared experience.
So it's about embracing the imperfection.
Not being afraid to try.
It's all part of the adventure.
And I think that mindset, it applies to more than just language learning.
To travel in general.
Be open to new experiences. Step outside your comfort zone.
I love that. And you know what's so cool about this language learning journey?
What's that?
It doesn't have to end when you come home.
It can spark a lifelong passion
For exploring other cultures.
for learning new languages,
It's like this guide has given us a whole new way of thinking about language and its power.
to connect us to the world.
Exactly, well said.
True.
So as we wrap up this deep dive...
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Okay.
How can you go beyond simple translation and really embrace those nuances of language and culture to create richer and more meaningful travel experiences?
It's a great question to think about. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into essential English phrases for travelers. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and practical tools to navigate your future adventures with confidence and a sense of connection. Remember, language learning isn't just about the words themselves. It's about opening your mind to different ways of seeing and experiencing the world. Happy travels, everyone.